Hello everyone. So today actually I will explain how we are going to use the Spring Cloud config server for getting the property details from Git or any source where actually we are we are storing the data for properties related to the any properties like maybe database configurations and all the other message information kind of thing. So in a microservice world, basically we have uh, break any monolith applications into multiple microservices. So that means instead of one application, multiple application actually we are managing. So so that means the number of the microservice actually basically increase day by day. Okay, so it's and like even also multiple instances of those microservices running means like there is a one microservice, for example order microservice or some any other microservices. For single microservices, due to the load balancer or lot of load is coming, so to handle those things, maybe one inst means those microservices we can run in a multiple instances, four or five or three, whatever it is. So that depends based on the need basically. So updating the configurations properties and restarting all those instances manually or even like with the automated script may not be feasible, right? Because suppose there is some script, maybe some message for example, or maybe some text that we are taking from the properties file. Now suppose we have modified some text, so that means we need to, if we want to reflect this particular text, then we need to automatically run those instances manually or maybe some automation script. So that is very tedious, right? So that's why basically the Spring Cloud config actually address these issues. We can create the Spring Cloud config server, which is basically provide the configuration values for all our microservices. And and that configuration that I was saying, that maybe we can store in a Git, in a SVN, or maybe in a database or anywhere, maybe we can store those configurations. We can just configure the locations of the Spring Cloud config server in our microservices, so that it will basically load all the properties where we can start the applications. Whenever we are update the properties, we can actually the concept of the actuator is there. So suppose like if we update any text or something, so that means it will reflect all the services. So that's why there's a concept of the actuator is there. So actually we need to trigger one endpoint which basically refresh the data so that it will affects from all the server. Okay, so that is the thing that maybe that we will do over there. So that also like we can check that. Also I'll show you like how you are going to do those things, how you're going to reload the configurations changes without without restarting the applications for each instance. Okay, so basically what we are going to do over here, so let's say one example. First of all, we are going to configure the Spring Cloud config server. Then we are storing all our informations in a GitHub, and from there we are fetching all the details like properties file details in a config server, and then accordingly we will call the config server from our microservices. So the structure wise, like I have created two microservices. One is like as you can see over here, one is the invoice microservice, another one is the order microservice. These are just temporary or dummy kind of thing, just for demonstrating like how Spring Cloud config basically worked. So that's why I've created those things. In a real scenarios, you guys can create, and maybe I I think after this tutorial, if you like guys step by step, then obviously you will get definitely not any issues. But still, if you guys get any issues, then please drop a comment in the comment sections, and so that you guys can like understand. I will also clear those, try to clear those things. So if we say like what is the prerequisite for this one, so the prerequisite one is the like config server. We need to create one microservice over here, and two other microservices, invoice ms and the order ms, and another actually repository we need to create in the GitHub. I'll tell you something like this. So I've created this ms config repo. Here I have put two properties over here. One is the invoice ms, another one is the order ms. So if we click this one, so you can see I put this welcome message. Okay, in the invoice message I have put this one. Okay, and this particular repo I have created. Okay, this is the repo, ms config repo. Okay, so this is the basically repo where I've kept this two file. Okay, now we can create the project from the Spring Boot initializer. So basically for creating the Spring Boot config server, so there's a certain things, certain dependencies that we need to add. So if you like create the project from the Spring initializer, so over there is options to choose like what is the dependencies you guys can use. So as you can see over here, as I'm using the 3.2.1, this is the Marvin Spring Boot version, and Java 17, this is the Java version, and this is the Spring Cloud version, that is the latest with this is Spring 3.2. So you guys don't need to mention manually. If you like create the project from the Spring Boot initializer, from there you guys can get the options, so it will automatically take those things. This thing is the Spring Cloud config server. This dependency is required this for as this particular module or microservice represent as a Spring Cloud config server. So this is basically this dependency is required, and this actuator is that I was showing that for basically real-time monitoring, checking, or maybe if you want to refresh something. So that's why this actuator is needed. Okay, and this is the Spring Boot cloud dependencies. So these are the needed. So this is the that dependency wise is needed, and in properties file basically for make it we need to provide the application's name, and from where basically it will fetch the informations like properties file details. So that actually we need to provide the URL details for the git that I provided over that I was showing on. This is the for me it's a git URL. If you guys try with some another URL, you guys can mention over here. Okay, so this is the that means properties file you need to mention over here. And for like enabling this particular thing, this Spring Boot applications as a Spring Cloud config server, we just need to add another annotations in our main application class. This one, enable config server, these annotations we need to add over here, so that it will be treated as a like Spring Cloud config server. As you can see, okay, this is the annotation that basically we have to use so that it will be treated as a Spring Boot cloud config server. So next, as I was saying, the locations we have provided over here, this one. So that's it about this Spring Cloud config server, and we just need to add the applications specific config file in the Git repository. So that I've already added, like this is for the invoice microservice and this is for the order microservice. So these are already I've added over here. Okay, so next what we can do next, we need to create two other projects from Spring Boot initializer, uh, similar kind of this config. This is the invoice ms and this is the order ms. So these are also I created already from the Spring Boot initializer, so you guys can like create your own. uh, okay, if we checked about the configurations for this, like what dependencies basically we need for this. So if we see, we need the dependencies, this one, this actuator for refreshing data, and this Spring Cloud config client, so that it will be treated as a client of the any server. So it will become a client of the config server, right? So that's why basically we need to added this dependency, this Spring Cloud config client, so that it will be treated as a client of config server. From here basically we are going to call this config server for getting all the data for properties file, because the we are maintaining or we are saving all the data in a centralized position, in a centralized config server. We are not maintaining properties file for individual microservice level, right? We are just trying to means there is one config server, and from the config server you are getting the data. So this dependencies is needed for this one Spring Cloud config client. Okay, this is the need, and this is the for creating the controller and other things Spring Starter where this is needed. And as you can see over here, this is the cloud version, this is the Java version, and this is the Spring Boot version, this 3.2.1. All the things are latest. Okay, so this is the things for this invoice microservice. And for the properties wise, as I was saying, from over here we're going to call the config server. So over here basically we need to provide the application's name, we need to provide the port, we need to provide the from where basically it will call the Spring server, means the Spring config. So config server, the 880, as you can see over here, this is the port. We have not mentioned anything over here, so that's why the default port is 880. So localhost 880, this is the config import. Okay, so these configurations basically we need to provide over here, so that once the application is stored, then it will fetch the details from the config server. Similar, in the similar fashions, we need to create the properties file for this one also, and the port is 8082. Okay, this is the application's name, this is the port, and this is the config server URL. And here also you can see dependencies wise we are using the same thing, like this is the cloud version, this is the actuator, this is the config client. The similar fashions actually we are mentioning over here. So once all the things are done, then we can start our applications. Or also before that, for the order MS, we just need to create one controller. So let me create the controller first, like order controller. Okay, and what we will do basically over here, we are going to, as it is a REST controller, so we need to use the REST endpoint. So we should annotate with the REST controller. Here also here means we need to provide the request mapping like this one, and here we need to provide the path. Okay, slash order, and then, or maybe yeah, order is fine. And here we need to create one method, public string get message. Okay, and return. Okay, and it will be a get mapping. And here also we can provide the path over here, like order, then we can see like welcome. Okay, and here we need to uh, public string message. Okay, how we are going to get this one? We are going to read the value, this one. How we are going to get this one? Read the values from the properties. So dollar this, and here basically we are going to welcome dot message. So let me like for this order ms, the properties file is welcome dot message. Okay, so this message basically we are going to use over here, this one, and this particular message returned from over here. So this is the for order controller. In similar fashion we are going to create another controller for the invoice. Okay, so let me copy this one and paste it over here. Let me rename this, not package, I need to rename the class invoice controller. Okay, and instead of this we need to mention add invoice. Okay, so this is the done now. Let's the sequence we should maintain for this one. First of all, we need to start our config server from over here, so that it will like fetch data from, means it will talk with actually the depot where actually data is stored. So from there then we are going to start. If you see over here, config server should started. Yeah, as you can see the config server started in 880 port. Okay, now let me start the invoice microservice. So this application will start in a 8083 port. Once it will start, then we can check from the postman. So as you can see over here, the fetching config details from 880 port, and invoice microservice started in the 8083 port. So you can check from over here. So for the invoice controller, the path is invoice and then welcome. Okay. So from the postman we can check like invoice slash welcome. Okay. So as you can see, welcome to config service invoice ms. Now if we run our order microservice, so that means it is basically uh, called from the, okay, once this is done, then we can see this is the like this property is basically triggered. Okay, so that's how it is basically working. And now let me start the order microservice. It will also start it soon. Config server, it will also fetching the from the 8080 port, and it started 8082 port. Okay, so now we can hit in a different port, in a different one like 8082, and here instead of invoice we are putting the order, as the path was different for order microservice, right? So it will also work. Welcome to config server updated. Okay, so now if we see like this order ms is the updated, this one is the order, and this was for the invoice. Now like if we want to update some messages, as I was showing over there, like if we updated something messages over, so how it will be reloaded. So let me like updated the properties file for this one, like updated. Okay, and we need to commit this one. Okay, so let me refresh invoice. So I have updated for this one with this updated. Now if we call this one, this updated one, so now if I refresh this one, so as you can see this is not refreshed, right? So how we are going to refresh this one? So for that basically we need to use another annotations for invoice controller in the applications. So in the applications basically, or maybe in the controller layer, we need to use another annotation which is basically do this one, refresh scope. So it will basically refresh the things. So now let me I need to stop the invoice applications, and I need to rerun it again. Invoice applications. Okay, so once it will start basically, okay, it started. Okay, now if we see this one is, it will be a like it will face the details for the updated, but as I was restarted, so that's why it's reflect, but without restarting, how it will be reflect. So let me uh, re-updated this one, so it will be, let me commit this message so that it will get this message now, right? But now we are getting this invoice ms updated. Now if we use this one, so it's still this one, but we should get this one, right? But so for that basically we need to use the refresh scope. So we need to do some kind of refresh. So that was 8083. That means in 8083 port actually the invoice microservice is running. So we need to refresh this one. So once it will refresh, we'll get success. Yeah, with 200. Now if we try this one, as you can see, it is updated now. That means it is taking the updated message. So now actually we did not do any restart. Without restarting, it will be reflect over here, right? So this is the beauty of this refresh scope annotation. So that's why I've added this one, this refresh scope. Okay, so this is basically actually do the means reloaded kind of thing. Without restarting our applications, it will read the data from the config file. So this is the thing. So this is the thing that basically we can achieve using this uh, means restarting anything. So this is basically dynamic if you want to change the configurations. So only we just want to refresh the thing from the actuator so that it will basically refresh all the things. And for that we have you need to use the annotations, the like refresh scope basically we need to use. So this is the overall thing that how we are going to read the data from the config server, how we can maintain the centralized properties file, so that we need to keep all the document in a single place, and for all the microservice we can get data, so that we don't need to maintain multiple properties file, and if anything is modified then we need to rerun maybe restart the microservice again. So this is the kind of the beauty of this Spring Cloud config server. Okay, if you guys have anything, please do let me know in the comment sections. That's all for this Spring Boot Cloud config server. If you guys, I hope if you guys have clear idea about this think overall process of this Spring Cloud config server. Just demonstrating purpose, I have kept very simple this one so that you guys can understand easily. And don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.